Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitan Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. So our Dandavat pranams to all the assembled Vaishnavas and sincere seekers. Very happy to be joining you all again for our regular Bhagavad Gita study. I've been in India. I was in India for about 6 weeks, and then we've just been kind of trying to work out the timing to start again with these meetings. And I feel so blessed. There's so much value in just having a regular study of the scripture. There's so much, because the material environment is like this ocean with all these waves that takes you this way, that way. And these regular practices, they're kind of like a boat that we can hold on to, keep ourselves on course, right? Get us out of just the world of our own minds and expose ourselves to the beautiful infinite reality, the beautiful, right? So here we go. So it seems like we are coming towards the middle end of the second chapter. I'm going to start a screen share here. Share sound, and as we have been doing, I'm going to play our Guru Dev chanting these verses, and I was just playing it up to where we are. I think Guru Dev is around 47, 48. I'm going to play it here.
Karavanye bhadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phalahetur bhur mate sangustakarmani.
So that verse, just to highlight it, as some of you, of course, are aware, this is one of the key verses in Bhagavad Gita. It's probably the most well-known verse that's describing it, karma yoga. It's like concisely describing the essential principles of karma yoga, or nishkam karma yoga, the yoga of selfless action. And it's a wonderful meditation. And it translates well into the practice of devotion, right? It kind of gives a nice solid foundation for the practice of devotion, this principle of selflessness. So I won't go into it too much because we've had a lot of discussion on already, but for those who are taking notes or are wanting to learn shlokas, this is one to learn. This is a key verse of Bhagavad Gita.
Yogastha kudukaramani sangang tvakta dhananjaya siddha siddho samo kutva samattang yoga yuchyate durena jhavarang karma buddhi yogat.
This is also a really wonderful verse. And, the word yoga has different definitions, right? Sometimes it's described as this like union, right? This connection with the divine, right? And it can also be described as a path, right? Any path that is helping, like a discipline that is helping us to connect with divinity from our lower mundane position, right, at present. But another definition of yoga is also given in Bhagavad Gita, and that's what's being described here, this state of balance, right? Samatvam yoga uchyate. This is yoga, right? In the midst of the bewildering movement in this world, right? In the midst of the duality, the bewildering duality, the highs and the lows of this mundane experience, to be able to keep ourselves fixed with spiritual vision, right? And to remain indifferent to this movement of the mundane. This is also a definition of yoga. And again, it's not exactly pure devotion, but it's something that can act as a helpful foundation for the practice of devotion.
Dharanjaya buddhau saranamanyiccha kripana phalahitava buddhijukto jahatiha ubheshu krita duskrite tasmad yogaya yujjasya yoga karmasu kaushalam.
And I'm just remembering one thing our Guru Dev mentioned once. He was referring to this one comment of Haridas Thakur, where he says that he's saying that even Namabas, right? Namabas is the shadow reflection of the real name, right? Hazy chanting, it's sometimes described as. Even that is very powerful and can give us liberation, right? Can give us liberation from the mundane. Now, from the highest perspective, mukti, liberation, is very inconsequential. It's nothing. Even it is sometimes described as something to be feared by the devotees. Oh, liberation, stay away from me. No, I just want to serve Krishna. I don't want anything else, right? So liberation generally has a bit of a bad rap, right, in the plane of bhakti. But our Gurudev, he made this point, but it's not a bad thing. And actually, if we had liberation, it would be helpful. It would be helpful. It would give us a nice platform, right, on which we can practice our life of devotion. We know that in the big picture, it doesn't count for very much, but it is something. But the more that we become detached from the mundane, the more smoothly our life of devotion, right, can flow. Of course, our emphasis is on practices of devotion, and we understand that ultimately liberation is something that will come as a side effect, right? But if liberation happens to come to us, we won't have any problem with that. We can support our life of devotion as long as we have everything in proper perspective. Yoga karma sukoshalam. Yoga is the art of all works. This is a well-known expression. How in the midst of every situation to maintain this spirit of yoga. This is an art, right? And this is something that we are trying to carry out. Because it's not ultimately about the action, right? But it is the internal adjustment. That is what makes it yoga or not, right? How is our consciousness relating with the particular circumstance, right?
Karma jang buddhi yukta hi phalang tattva manishina janama bandha vinirmukta padam gacchantanamayam yadate mohakalilam buddhir vyatitarishati tada gantasi nirvedang srutadvasya srutasya cha sruti viprtipannate yada thasyasi nischala samadhavachala buddhi sada yugam avapsyasi arjunuvacha sita pragasya ka bhasa samadhisthasya kesava sitadhi king prabhaseta kima sita prajeta kim. Sri Bhagavan vacha prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan atmanyevatmanatushta sthita pragyastaduchyate dukhe sanudvignamana sukhesu vigata spriya vitaraga bhaya krodha sthita dhirmuniruchyate ya sarvatrano visneha taptat pratpa shubhashubham नाभिनंदति नद्यष्टि तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता यदा संहरते चायं कुर्मोऽङ्गानिव सर्वथा इन्द्रियाण्येन्द्रियार्थेभ्यस्तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता विषया विनिवर्तन्ते निराहारस्य देहिनः रसवर्जं रसोपस्य परं दृष्ट्वा निवर्तते यदतु छपि कौन्तेय पुरुषस्य विपश्चितः इंद्रियाणि प्रमाथीनि हरन्ति प्रसभं मनः.
Okay, let's go through. I think I'm just going to go through these translations. I don't know if you need to chat. So I'll pick up from 50. So this we kind of look. The wise person abstains from both good and bad actions in this world. Engage thus in yoga, as yoga is the art of all works. So ultimately everything, this point is a little puzzling, right? Okay, we can understand why we want to avoid bad actions, but why is good also mentioned here? Why should we avoid good actions? And the answer is that we understand that ultimately everything in this world is reactionary. Right? Anything where there's any individual attachment involved, right? It is reactionary. And so what is the principle of yoga, right? That we are simply doing what is our duty. And we are in a selfless manner, right? Not expecting, there's not that ego, that like self-centered ego, result-based ego, where there's some particular expectation, right? That I will do this good thing and I'll expect this result, or I'll do this bad thing and I'll expect this result, right? But I'm simply doing my duty. And obviously, if it is genuinely duty, that presupposes that it will be something good, right? That goes without saying. But the point is that it's being carried out without a sense of, self-centered attachment. It is simply my duty to do this. And by acting in the spirit of selflessness, then we are detaching ourselves from the whole plane of karma. And we're not engaging ourselves, entangling ourselves with this plane of action and reaction. The wise are enlightened by giving up the fruits of their actions and thus attaining liberation from the bondage of birth. They reach the plane beyond all suffering. Because, ultimately in this world, right, it's kind of like it's a risky game, right? And those who have some knowledge of the Vedas, they know the rules of the game, right? And they can kind of play the game a little bit to their advantage, right? And so this is what this is kind of like how many Hindus, to use that word, that word, I mean, say Hindus. I mean, yeah. How do we say? Let's say, because we also think of ourselves as Hindus in a sense. It just depends how you're defining these words, right? But if we say Hindu in the sense of someone who's following the general conceptions of the Vedas in somewhat of a stereotyped way, then many of them their interest is in good karma, right? And so they're kind of like playing they understand that ultimately we are soul, and that ultimately all the gain of this world is meaningless, but there's still that attachment, right, to the gain of this world. Welcome, Jayadev, and also Lynn. Lynn has joined us, in Scarlet. So there's this kind of like game playing. There's this calculation, right? That I do this amount of charity, right? I do this puja, this worship of this deva, and chant this mantra, right? And then I can expect some particular result in this life and also the next life, right? Let me, I'm also building up a reserve for the next life, right? And so there are many who live like that, and they have some advantage because of the knowledge of the Veda, they know the rules of the game. but it's a risky game. You know, one wrong move and you can be out into the netherworld, right? It's a risky game. You don't know where the waves of this environment are gonna take you, you know. Once I saw this, it was Abhidut one of his projects. Some of you have seen these big domes, right, that he makes. And there was this one video production they made called Journey of a Yogi. And it showed all the 14 different planetary systems that are within each universal system or Brahmanda. And they did a lot of research into this. Like there's graphic images. They did a lot of research into the scriptures, like looking into descriptions of each of these different planes of existence. And it's a frightening world, you know. Maybe you can have a happy time in the heavenly plane, Swarga Loka, but one wrong move and you can get stuck in some, you know, scary place. So it's a risky game. And besides all of that, it has nothing to do with the real hunger and need of our eternal self, our soul, right? And so the wise souls, they just detach themselves from that whole plane, right? From the good and the bad of this reactionary plane. And they're striving for something more meaningful. Jayadev, you wanted to share something.
Oh, that word karmi, like someone who's engaging in karma. Like karma is generally you're trying to generate good karma to elevate, like an elevationist.
Okay.
So I was thinking the word karmi rather than Hindu, although most Hindus are karmis.
Right.
Or karma kandi could be a word for them.
Oh,
I don't like that word.
helpful.
I don't like that word Hindu.
It's a little problematic, yeah, because there are so many connotations, and it doesn't have any real meaning, right? In the first
It's derogatory. It's a term from people over the Indus River for those people over the Indus River. Sanatana Dharmi, if you want to be really general, it's Sanatana Dharma. So a Sanatana Dharmi, a Bharati, you could say. I think they're actually trying to do a lot politically in India to reclaim a lot of the original terminology, because even the name India is actually derogatory. It's all derogatory, and they've kind of taken it on because of colonial. Yeah. So Hindu is very much a colonialist, and not quite a colonialist, but a Muslim word for Indians, basically.
Oh,
for people from
Muslim
India.
word for Indians. Wow.
Yeah, India is called Bharat, right? You know this,
Right.
Bharat. And I think Modi is trying to do a whole, he's knocking down Muslim temples. He's getting to try to get people to change the name to Bharata. So yeah, Sanatana Dharmi would be what they would probably want to be called from within the tradition. But Karmi or Karma Kandi, because they're following Karma Kand to try to elevate themselves and have more experience through the Vedic thing. Right. And we are definitely not Hindus. I remember there's a lecture with Srila Sridhar Maharaj, like, are we Hindus? And it's like, Vaishnava, you know?
Yeah,
Vaishnava is not a Hindu.
I mean, the thing is, ultimately, they're just words, and it just depends what the connotation is. That's the thing, right? And I mean, like Saraswati Thakur, he conceived of this plan of opening he called it Hindu temple in London. He also, because it's just like, okay, that's the terminology nowadays. We'll just go with it, right? But yeah, if it just depends how you're defining the terms, right? But I agree, if the origin of it is derogatory, then we definitely want to avoid it, possible. Yeah, it's a tricky thing. But
sometimes I use the word yogi, like a yogi, because Vaishnavas are a type of yogi, that's another general blanket term that's from the Vedas rather than being from some other culture talking about Hindus.
Right. Yeah, and the word karmi is good, but then another problem is in our Western Hare Krishna society, there's also another usage of that, which isn't quite correct,
No, they're technically vikarmis. But Srila Prabhupada, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, did use that word a couple times to refer to vikarmis. So then the Westerners did adopt it, but I believe technically that word karmi is someone who's actually practicing good karma, trying to elevate.
It is. Yeah. I remember once Goswami Maharaj, he was talking about that in one of his classes, and he was saying, like, a karmi is actually a good person. It's a decent person. karmi, strictly speaking, means someone who's trying to live their life according to revealed truth, right? They're not just living randomly, whimsically, but they're following some regulated life according to the scripture. So, a karmi is a decent person, actually. So yeah, karmi, that's like the right word, huh? Or an anyabilashi. Anyabilashi. That actually, most Westerners, we're anyabilashis. Anyabilash for those who don't know, means like random, whimsical desires. Literally, it actually, anyabilash means other desires. Because really, there's only one real desire, that is to serve Krishna, right? So anything else is just termed as other, right? But it's used in the discourse of our gurus. Anya Bilash is a term used to refer to like whimsical desires. Like karma, it can be used to refer to someone who's kind of like living out their desires in some regulated way under the guidance of the scripture, right? Organized way, living their life of desire, controlled way. But then Anya Bilashi would be someone who's just randomly, doing whatever. Because just because. Because it feels good. Well, this is fun. Thanks for joining us, Chai. Okay. When your intelligence fully emerges from the dense forest of illusion, you will be indifferent to all that has been heard or is yet to be heard. Wow, how beautiful, man. When your intelligence fully emerges from the dense forest of illusion, you will be indifferent to all that has been heard or is yet to be heard. You shall attain perfect yoga or pure devotion when your intelligence, undisturbed by the apparent contradictions of the Vedas, abides in the Lord. And then this is a nice point, right? Because apparent contradictions of the Vedas, because the Vedas are all accommodating, right? The Vedas are throwing out a line for everyone, right? Throwing out a wide net and giving a space for everyone to jump on the ladder, right? And so they're giving different level. And what this means is that they're giving different levels of knowledge, different levels of instruction, class 1, class 2, class 3. And so with one perspective, you may say, hey, this, what it says over here and what it says over there, they're completely contradictory. But with a more discerning eye, you understand, no, they're giving different stages of understanding, right? And if you're looking with the broadest vision, you see where the Vedas are actually taking someone, then like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, what is his statement? All the Vedas declare that Krishna is the property of Radharani and her girlfriends. This is Bhaktivinoda Thakur's analysis of the Vedas. Now, where will you actually find that? Right? But he's seeing that that's, everything's culminating in Srimad Bhagavatam, right? Srimad Bhagavatam is the fruit on that tree, and that is giving the gift of Krishna Bhakti, devotion to Krishna. And when that Krishna Bhakti is ultimately the property of Srimati Radha. So when one has that broad vision of like, what is the overarching, objective of all these Vedic teachings, and then they may be able to say something like that.
I have a question about the Sanskrit in that verse.
Which
it says,
verse?
The one that you were just discussing. What is this? 53.
53.
It says this word "kim" multiple times. I was wondering what that means.
Kim just means like what?
Okay.
Wait, I don't see it in 53. Where is it? Oh, here in
In the
54.
Sanskrit,
This is the
in
word.
the transliteration.
Right.
Oh, I was one down. Forgive me.
Here. Yeah, it's like a question word. How, what, like that. In
Okay, thank
Bengali, you hear ki. It's very close. It's ki.
Oh, they don't make the M as strong. Okay.
Yeah, it's just a question word. Yeah.
It's a name that's very dear to me, so I was wondering what
I
it
see.
translated as.
Oh, I see. Oh, sorry.
No, don't be sorry. This is good.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you so
it's a
much.
very important word. Asking sincere questions. um, did you want to say something, Jaidev?
Nothing that important, but it's probably one of those, I don't know that word that well, but it's probably one of those ones that can morph into a bunch of different meanings. It's how in this context. But I love how you just knew that right away. Like you didn't even you knew exactly what Kim was. Like I had to think about it. I had to like look at but yeah, that's cool. But yeah, how in this context it looks like, because I'm going through the the word for word.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've seen that in Bengali. There's this, the word ki is used like that. Like there's a kind of broadness in the scope of its usage, and it's kind of just like a question word. That's how I see it. So this is quite a cool, this is very nice, right? And remember, Arjuna is kind of like representing us, right? And Arjuna is sometimes like really bringing things down to the plane of, practical reality, right? Like as which is kind of where we are. Like how does this in a practical, immediate, tangible sense, how does this play out, right? So like then later on, one of the famous questions of Arjuna is like, Krishna, everything you're saying is really nice, but what happens if someone like gives up the material world for their spiritual practice and then they fall down midway and then they've lost everything? They lost the material side, they lost the spiritual side, right? So Arjuna is sometimes kind of like bringing things down, keeping on the level, right? And so here Arjuna is saying like all these wonderful qualities that you're describing in regards to yoga, like someone who's actually attained that state, what do they look like? How do they behave? What are their characteristics? How does that practically play out, right, in this world? Right, so it's a very nice question. Stita pragya. This is the word. Stita pragya means someone of this fixed mind, firmly established vision, right? Kabasha. What is the description of that person? Samadhi stasya, who's situated in samadhi, right? This highest attainment of yoga, trance, on the divine. Let's see. How does this stita D, this person of fixed intelligence, kim prabhasheta, how do they speak? How do they act? How do they be? And as I recall, I don't have my own copy with me. I have some notes on it, but there's some nice commentaries on this verse in the editions of Vishwanath Chakravarti and Baladev Vijayabhushan. And as I recall, this asita is referring to like kind of like not doing, like Rajay, how do they do and how do they not do? Kind of like in the Shakespearean sense, like to be or not to be. Like how do they act and how do they not act? Something like that, right? I would like to look at that. So here it's just put as be. How do they be? So let's see how the Lord replies. Oh, Partha, this is a name for Arjuna, of course. One who rejects all desires that enter the mind and remains self-satisfied within is known as a person whose wisdom is firmly established. So this is kind of interesting, right? Because this is describing someone who's not exactly on a fully transcendental plane of consciousness, right? Because they're still confronting desire. So this is also kind of relatable. This is relatable, right? This is someone who they are confronting desire. Desire is coming to them, but they're not letting themselves be controlled by that desire, right? They're rejecting that and remaining situated in this plane of inner, inner joy, inner connection, right? So this is relatable. And this is, I would say, this is one reason why Bhagavad Gita is very helpful for us. It's relatable. It's talking to people like us, and if we don't kind of go through this, then it's easy to get into a kind of mode of imitation. Like, for example, when you read the scripture Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Charitamrita is just like pure cream, right? And you're hearing all these like wonderful, joyful pastimes of the Lord, and everyone's in ecstasy every other page and going through so many ecstatic symptoms and crying and laughing and singing kirtan. And it's like, but it's like, it's so, it's just kind of like jumping to the highest level, right? And if we don't kind of, if we're not clear on, if our sambandha gyan is not clear, like our understanding of what is our actual position, right? And what's real divine feeling and where am I actually, then it's, if we're not kind of clear on that, then it's easy to get into a mode of imitationism, which we tend to call sahajiyism. So Bhagavad Gita is very helpful because it's kind of like giving us these building blocks. It can be a little dry, at least for me. It's dealing with kind of like the bricks and the mortar, right, of our spiritual life. It's not like the icing on the cake. Right? But it's necessary. It's necessary. It's very clarifying and purifying, and it's like keeping it real, right? Oh yeah, this is my condition. So this is very relatable. This is someone who's not on such a high level that they've transcended mundane desire, but they're facing mundane desire, but they're not allowing it to control them. They're rejecting, right? And they're keeping themselves situated within. So this is something that we can try to emulate, right? One who is undisturbed by sorrow, whose hankering for pleasure has gone, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is known as a silent sage of steady mind. One who is not attached to anything in this world, who neither enjoys nor resents auspiciousness or inauspiciousness. His wisdom is firmly established. So again, this state of yoga, right, which we were discussing earlier, to maintain this balance, this equanimity in the midst of the duality of this world. Sometimes so-called good comes, sometimes so-called bad, comfort, discomfort, right? But we are connecting with a deeper plane, a steady plane. When one's senses are controlled and totally withdrawn from their objects, like the limbs of the tortoise withdrawn in its shell, his wisdom is firmly established. And so, unfortunately, I don't have my notes with me, but in the commentaries of our acharyas, they point out how Krishna is replying to each of these questions of Arjuna. And I believe this one is describing the asita, kim asita. How does he not act? How does he not engage and react, right, to the mundane plane. So this very nice analogy is given of the tortoise with its limbs withdrawn. Because all these, and as we become a little more evolved, we'll begin to see how all the sense stimuli in the environment, like there's this interaction that's going on between the senses and their corresponding sense objects, right? The eyes are pulled towards some beautiful sight, right? The ears towards some beautiful sound, the tongue towards some taste, the touch, fingers to some touch, right? And in more base mundane consciousness, we're just living within that sensory plane, right? But as we evolve, then we'll start to feel this distance, this space. Oh, the sense of sight is pulled to this, but that's not actually me, right? The sense of that my ears are pulled here, but that's not who I am, right? And so then we'll begin to see this whole this whole show playing out, right? There's this like a circus that's just playing out. Right? The senses are being pulled to the sense objects. But we can just watch that. Right? We don't need to engage with that. We can, this is being pulled here, but I don't need to follow through with that. And so this is very helpful, right? Those senses our senses are withdrawing from their corresponding sense objects, like this tortoise analogy, not engaging. Remaining within that deeper plane of spiritual connection within. Now, this is a really key verse, and it's one we've heard all of our gurus discuss, and I believe Srila Swami Maharaj would emphasize this in particular, this concept of higher taste. And this is very key, this is very central to the practice of Krishna consciousness. The embodied being may renounce the sense objects, but the taste for them remains. But that too vanishes for the man of wisdom by his vision of the Supreme. So very, very key point here, right? That ultimately there's a necessity to put more emphasis on cultivating our attachment to something higher. We're not cultivating detachment. Cultivating detachment, that's not sustainable. That only gives temporary results. If we're trying to forcefully cultivate what we're not doing. It's like cultivating the negative side. Oh yeah, I'm not doing this and I'm not doing that, right? That doesn't get you very far, and it's not very fulfilling, right? And you can't maintain it. You can only maintain it up to a certain point, but it's unnatural, and it's not fulfilling, right? So this is the beauty of Krishna consciousness, where the emphasis is on the side of beauty, right? What you are doing on the higher side, on the beautiful side. And then naturally you will overcome that lower taste, that lower connection. This is a key principle of Krishna consciousness. Oh, I'm not smoking, or I'm not doing that. But no, what am I doing? Right? This is what I am going to do. And it's much more joyful. So this, and again, for those who are keeping notes or want to learn some shlokas, this is a verse I would recommend to memorize. This is a very helpful verse. I mean, our Guru Dev quoted this so many times. It's a very key verse for us. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehinaha rasavarjam nasopyasya param drishtva nivartane param drishtva. this higher vision, this drishta's vision. This must be the same root as the word darshan, right? Drishta, the same root. This param, supreme vision. So that's what we're cultivating. Higher vision, higher taste. Here this word rasa is referring to taste. So we're not focused on rejecting the lower taste, but we are embracing the higher taste. But see, the problem is that there's that awkward in-between period, right? That's pretty much where we are. If we're gonna have like real talk, there's that awkward in-between phase. It's very nice to talk about the principle, but when it comes to actually practicing the night of the dark soul and all that good stuff, right? So then that's why there is an element of sadhana, right? Discipline. That we're just gonna, as our Gurudev said, happily do what we don't want to do. Because there is an element of fighting with our own selves. There's an element of that. It's a struggle, you know, and it's also okay to struggle. Because we can, ultimately we are depending on mercy. And when we're struggling, it's not that we actually think that we can do it on our own, but our struggle is a way of showing the Lord we're serious and we need mercy. Please help us. Please help me. It's a fine line. It's a tricky, it's a nuanced mood that, oh, I'm putting a lot of effort, right, into my life of practice or trying to attempt to control my senses and sometimes failing, right? But the point is not that we think we can do it, but we're just showing the Lord that we're sincere and we're trying. And that's our way of like inviting his grace. I'm just waiting for your grace. I'm showing you I'm serious about needing your mercy. I can't do it on my own. So it will be a struggle, but as Srila Sridhar Maharaj says, it is ultimately a sweet struggle because there is a sweet objective. And then the struggle, the pain, there's a sweet, it is all tinged through with some sweetness. Bittersweet. Our life of practice is bittersweet. There in Loving Search for the Lost Servant, in the preface, right, there's that beautiful image of Krishna embracing Gopakumar. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he's kind of like expressing the heart of Krishna as he's embracing Gopakumar, just like new member of the crew. And there's this beautiful expression there coming from the heart of Krishna, like, oh, I know how much you struggled, you know, trying to come to me, how many tears you've shed, right? How you've wandered the streets, trying to find me, trying to connect with me. I know what struggle you've been through. So the Lord, he is sympathetic, you know, to our struggle. And we are ever hopeful of receiving his grace. Here we go, right? And yet, O son of Kunti, the turbulent senses can forcibly plunder the mind of even the wise person striving for liberation. One can reach a very advanced state. And we hear examples of that in the scriptures, right? Even one who reaches the stage of Bhagavad, they're not in a safe position, right? Bhagavad is the stage where one's like actually seeing and feeling the presence of the Lord everywhere, right? They're situated in this steady God consciousness and devotion to the Lord. But even that stage, it is a very high stage. Even from there, it is not a safe position. And there are examples given of persons falling even from that high stage. So it is not an easy matter. And maintaining a mood of humility, taking shelter of Guru and Vaishnava, these are all very key to being able to remain on the path. Well, let's see. We've got about 10 minutes left. I don't know if we want to. Well, we're almost at the end of the chapter, aren't we? Well, I don't want to rush. No, I don't want to rush through. Does anyone want to add any thoughts, or let's see our group here. We've had a few others join. Had Ramananda Prabhu join, Rupa Nuga Prabhu's joining us, Dana joined us, Krishna and Johnny joined us much earlier. Anyone have any shares or questions? Anything they'd like to add to the conversation today?
I can fill space with a reflection that I was kind of tripping on, and a sort of reflection question.
Yeah, please.
If no one else is sharing anything, just because I know we have a little time to kill. In these two verses, there's a pratishta as established. And I was thinking about, is that, because we use that word to refer to people who are trying to establish a position in the world, like fame, or so I'm just seeing how it's related to that, like where the Lord's trying to take us home and we're trying to establish ourselves in the wrong place, like as the root of petition. Does that sound right, or what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's an interesting word, and it is used, and it can be used in a positive sense. I've only ever, I think I've heard Gurudev once use it in a positive sense, and in one of Saraswati Thakur's compositions, he uses it, that Vaishnava K, right? And our Gurudev would quote that. But what is it?
And there's that word again.
Pratishta, tate koronishta, that I am the, but so it means like to firmly situate, establish oneself, right? And so ego, right? There's positive expression of ego, and there's negative expression of ego, right? And so, yeah. What was it that you said again? I forgot.
Oh, well, the other thing I said is there's that word again, Vaishnava K, because you were talking about K, Ki, Kim.
Oh, right. Yeah, K. Yeah, that's another one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's that word. Yeah.
Yeah, they're like who? Yeah. Who is a Vaishnava? Vaishnavi pratishta tate koronishta. That is the phrase. And our Gurudev rendered that as that I am the servant of a Vaishnava. Like that is my pratishta. That is my ego. So, but I forgot what the point that you made originally.
Oh, I was just seeing it used in a positive sense in the two verses here.
Oh, I see. Right. Yeah. It did come up there, didn't it? Let me open it up.
Tasya prajna pratishtita.
42.
Wow, actually says it twice, the same phrase. I never noticed that. 57 and 58, the last pada. Tasya prajna pratishtita. It says that in both. 57, 58.
Let's see. Tasya pragya pratishtita. Oh, that's very nice. You pointed that out. Oh yeah, it's the same phrase. Tasya pragya pratishtita. Yeah, that's very nice. Firmly established, right? Pratishtita. Yeah, that's really nice for him. His wisdom is firmly established. Right. Yeah, and so our tendency is that we are, I would say, like how I might render it in the mundane sense is this self-assertion, right? Mundane self-assertion, self-establishment, bigging ourselves up, right? Establishing our own I am, right? What about me? Right, but yeah, here it's being fixed in the spiritual conception, right? Self-establishment. Oh, and Ash is pointing out, it comes up again in 61. Very nice, yeah. Tasya pragya pratishtita. It's the same phrase. Very nice, very nice. steady. Let's put here. Yeah, nice point. Yeah, it's actually something I've only started, and it was Suvasini who pointed out recently in one of our meetings how sometimes these phrases are repeated, and do you remember what chapter it was? There was one, it was very sweet. It was Krishna like reassuring Arjuna. It was
it was early in the
you
second
remember
chapter.
it?
Yeah, because it was the one where what I noticed was the validation in that same passage, where it's like, yeah, this exists, but you don't need to lament. It was the word.
There's not, that was it. It was lamentate. Yeah. It was do not lament. Yeah. No sochiti. It was that word. Yeah. Yeah, probably was at the beginning of chapter 2 somewhere. That's right. Yeah, and I never noticed that before. It was Suvasini. I think it was 3 times.
Oh no, I think it was like 5 in 10 verses. It was like in 11 through 20 or something.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It was a lot.
Yeah, it was. And I never noticed it before. Yeah, and I mean, repetition, it's a very powerful way of making a point. But I'd never really noticed that before in Bhagavad Gītā. And just here also, I'd never noticed that tasya pragya pratishtita that's being repeated a number of times in these verses. So this is our conception of pratishta, right? We want to be established in the plane of spirit. And our identity is loving servants of our loving Lord. Okay, and so we're coming to the end of chapter 2. There's some exciting verses coming up next week. Right. Well, any last words from anyone?
One last thing. He had something about pragya, that it's the way I understand pragya is like paramagyan. Like it's just a short, like a breakdown of jnana. So pragya is like, pra is a shortening of para. So it's saying highest wisdom. Because he was talking about how it's what did he say in the chat? Translated as wisdom and then as intelligence in the translation. It's in the chat here.
I see. I'm looking here. Yeah.
Ashaki.
That's ash. Yeah.
Ash. Oh yeah. I'm thinking it's Hindi pronunciation. Ash.
So you're saying it's like literally highest knowledge. So depending on what type of knowledge, it could be wisdom or intelligence.
I thought this pra is like being used as an intensifier. Like it's like
exactly like
intensifier. Oh, but it's coming.
And then the jnana is a shortening of jnana, like jnana, or how people will say.
See. But yeah, I mean, wisdom, intelligence, I mean, it like, being used synonymously.
Sometimes they're synonyms, sometimes they're not. English has a lot of characters like that.
Yeah, it depends how you're defining terms, right? But yeah, here they're being used pretty much synonymously. But yeah, but you could make a distinction in a certain context. But that's not the case here. Okay, well, should we close there for today? It's been another stimulating discussion. Thanks for all your contributions, Jai David. It's always really awesome to have your presence.
I'm so glad we're doing the gītā. Some of the stuff like toms and things like that, they're above my head. And gītā is definitely still way up there, but it's a little closer to where I can apply it to my little tiny life hole. and I really appreciate how you pull so much out of the gītā that I would never catch. And it just shows me how, very much every time there's always something you pull out. And I'm like, even that, like where you went through the Vishva, Vishva, it shows me the value of also listening to the commentaries or reading the commentaries too. But yeah, I just really appreciate the gītā class. I'm glad this is happening.
Oh, well, we're so glad you can also join and share your insight. Thank you all so much for your wonderful
Thank you very much for today's class.
Jai Shri Bhakti Sundar Govindadev Goswami Maharaj ki Jai, Shri Bhakti Dakshina Dev Goswami Maharaj ki Jai, all the assembled devotees and sincere seekers ki Jai. Have a beautiful week and see you all next time.
Thank you for today, sir.
Kripa Sindhu Bhyeva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Marie, for hosting, taking care of everyone.